Hey everyone. Hi, welcome. I don't know, can you see my screen? Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, we can see your screen. We can hear you very well. You can
Okay.
Yes, I
continue.
can see your screen and I can hear you clearly.
All right. Thank you so much, Stacy, for that introduction, and um, thank you so much. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate. Okay. So without taking much time, so first of all, I want to welcome you all, right? I understand that it's a weekend. Some of us will want to rest, want to take some time out, and your commitment to be here show that you are looking for something and you are willing to get all information to get that which you are looking for. So it's kudos, right? It's a good place to actually start from. I was trying to record these. Okay, it's recording. Okay. Um, so the first thing I want to say is that um, application for graduate school, no be beans, right? No be charts. So it has to be something that you are committed to doing, you are intentional about, right? If you are intentional about it, of course, like the Bible says, sorry, I'm a Christian, but the Bible says that um, if you keep seeking, you will find. If you keep knocking, the door will be open unto you. So that's a principle that cuts across life generally. When you are interested in something and you keep looking for that thing, of course, you will see what you are looking for. But if you are not intentional about it and you are lackadaisical about it, it may not come. That is just the truth of the matter. So it's not a walk in the park. It requires effort. It requires you to be intentional. It requires you to be strategic. It requires you to go above and beyond, right? And trust me, it's a good experience when you finally get your yes. I remember when I got my yes last year in Lagos. I couldn't even sleep till the next morning. I was just like jumping inside my room and rolling on the ground. So the experience is actually palpable. It's palpable. Um, so yeah, so let's delve into it quickly. Yeah, so I'll be a bit fast. We'll see how we'll go from there. So navigating US graduate school scholarship application. So the first thing that you want to know, or the first thing that you want to check for is the graduate school requirements for the school that you are applying to, right? The requirement for the school that you are applying to. What do they require? What document they need you to submit? And the next thing is first, so the various requirements. So it's important we all have that background. Then we start searching for schools. I'll run you through how I searched for schools when I was applying and how to build your CV. Your CV is a very important document. And how to develop like an application tracking sheet or a tracking system. Okay, so let's get into it. Okay, so these are like some of the documents that came on my head as I was thinking about this. So most schools we want you to submit like an unofficial transcript, right? Degree certificates or testimonial. So if you have not gotten your transcript yet, so it doesn't have to be um, unofficial. It can be an official one, right? I know that what some people have done in the past is to look for a way to get this transcript and then they have it like they have their own copy and they are able to send it out, right? So if you don't have a transcript yet, you should work on getting your unofficial transcript. I think that's like one very important thing that you should get before you apply because most school will not even consider your application if you don't have your transcript at hand. Uh, degree certificate, testimonial. So I think depending on how long you graduated, if you graduated up to 5 years ago, you should go and get your certificate, right? I think some universities, what they now do is to give a certificate as you are graduating. I know Uniport does that. I think they started it when I was graduating in 2015 and all that. So they do that as you are graduating, you are getting your certificate. So you should have your certificate. If it's up to 5 years, you should get your certificate. You should not be applying with testimonial. So these things sometimes we think, oh, they don't matter, but they really do matter. They really actually count towards your overall application. Then statement of purpose. So Dr. Gary will be coming up shortly to talk about some tips on how to make your application strong. And I know you benefit from that session. And some of my friend tomorrow will be talking about statement of purpose, how you can make it stronger, how to draft it. You shouldn't miss that as well. Recommendation letters. So is a common thing around in the US. If you're applying for a PhD program, you need about 3 recommendation letters. If you're applying for a master's, you need about 2. So what I know when I was applying, what some of my professors asked was that, okay, I send them a draft, right? So you can send a draft of what of recommendation that you want them to be sending on your behalf. You can send a draft to them. So first of all, you should have a meeting with them, let them know your goal, let them know what you are planning to do, your research interest and all that. Some of them will ask you to actually draft the letter and send to them, while some will say, oh, okay, it's no problem. Some will draft it by themselves, right? But you should let them know that, okay, in that recommendation letter, those people, they want to see your professor or the recommender talk about the fact that you can think critically, you can work independently. Talk about the fact that you are reliable. Talk about the fact that you are resilient. Like the person doesn't have to say, oh, for example, Joshua is resilient. Joshua can work independently. No, give scenarios, give examples, right? Give example of times you have worked independently, of situations where you have worked independently, and not that the person can give such example. So that's what they want to see. So you need about 3. So what I did when I was applying was that I think for a professor that asked me about sending them my recommendation letter, the only thing I did was I made sure I drafted the recommendation letter in such a way that if they need to use it for, like, because you'll be doing a lot of applications, right? Sometimes you need to do up to 10. You need to apply up to 10 different schools. The professor will not be writing recommendation for every school you apply to. So they just need to have a template. Don't send the same recommendation letter to the whole 3 professors. So if they ask you to send the recommendation letter, don't send the whole letter, the same letter to 3 of them. So make it different, right? You need to make it different. So I did that. For the one that asked me, I just made sure that the only thing that he or she will be changing is the name of the school, right? The name of the school, the address of the school. So you can draft it that way, that make it easy for them. So skills that you need to have, and these are the things that you should show all through your application document, whether it is your statement of purpose. Some school require you to send letter of motivation. Some require you to send proposals. Some require you to give like a creative writing stuff and all that. I think for English, I've seen them ask about creative writing. So you don't have to say, oh, I'm a critical thinker in your statement of purpose. You don't have to say I'm a problem solver. You don't have to say I have personal and self-leadership, right? So I believe when the speaker tomorrow will be talking about statement of purpose, you see how to actually show these skills. You need to show it. You don't need to tell. You need to show the skills, not to tell about the skills. So yeah, so that's that. As we search for schools, I will show you example of how that goes. Now, how do we search for schools? How do we search for schools? We'll get a bit practical here, but I just want to run through this. The first thing you need to do when you are searching for schools, Google is your friend. Google is your friend. First, you need to know what you want to do, your research interest. What research are you interested in? For example, you're interested in will I say chemical biology or chemistry, or you're interested in literature in English or education leadership and all that. So you shouldn't limit yourself if you are a chemist. You shouldn't limit yourself to organic chemistry or to chemistry department. You can search wide. Even chemical engineering, you can see a professor that does research interest in chemical engineering that aligns to you. You can see a professor that does research that is of interest to you in biochemistry. Sometimes in medical sciences, right? If for example you are interested in, let's say, biochemistry of the cell, biochemistry of tissues, biochemistry of organs, and all that, you can see a professor who's interested. So it doesn't have to be like English department or something. Or if you're interested in education leadership, instructional design, curriculum and instruction. So you can see those professors that do research in different departments. And one beautiful thing about the US is that you don't need to have a degree in chemical engineering to do a PhD in chemical engineering. So what is of importance is the research group that you are interested in joining, right? With your degree in chemistry, you can do something in chemical engineering. I've seen people even from chemical engineering that are doing PhD in chemistry, right? So it's your research interest and the research group that you want to join. So that's what is important. Sometimes people from chemistry even go to uh, uh, will I say electrical, computer engineering, and all that, because or statistics. Because sometimes you see a professor that does research in computation, and you want to build your career in that area. So it's important to search right. So now, before we start searching, and I show you example of so this is like the Excel sheet that you can use to keep track of the schools that you are applying to, right? So you need to keep track of the schools that you are applying to, and see school, what is their requirements, professors in the department, who I think their research interest aligns with mine, or who you think their research aligns with yours. The link to the program and the application link, do they have funding? Y means yes or N means no. Sometimes you see partial funding. What's the application deadline? You need to keep track. What's the program director email? Sometimes if they have funding, it may not be clear. Or sometimes they may say, oh, they may be silent on whether you need to have test of English as a first language or GRE before you can apply. So you should have the program director email address so that you can email them and ask for inquiry. In fact, let me tell you my story here. So in the university where I am now, it was through emailing the program director of the biochemistry program that I was able to kickstart the process, right? The first thing, I emailed the program director. I wanted to find out about their GRE, whether it is waived. I wanted to find out if they have application fee waiver and all that. And I emailed the professor. From there, we started talking about he responded, and I asked him, told him that okay, I'm interested in medicinal chemistry and all that. So he was like, oh, there's a professor in chemistry department. There are professors in chemistry department that do research in that area, that he would recommend that I email them, right? So I now asked him, okay, when I'm emailing them, should I tell them, should I mention his name in the email that I'm sending to them? He said, oh yeah, I can do that. So that was how I emailed the professor. There were just two, and both of them responded. I think because I must have mentioned that, oh, Professor Wallace asked me to reach out to you guys and all that. So you can email program directors and get information from them. Okay, so now let's get to the, yeah. Please let me know if you can still see my screen. Can you see Somto? Oh,
Yeah, we can see your screen. Joshua, you can go on.
all right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So now this is the tracking system. Just the Google Sheet is as simple as that. So the schools you're interested in, you list them here, the requirements from each school and all that. So the first thing I try to do is to search, right? Do a simple Google search. You see here, universities in America that offer PhD in English and related courses. PhD in English and related courses. You see a whole bunch, right? A lot of information that you get just from that search and all that. You see Cornell. Cornell is one of the top school. I think Cornell is in California also, in America. So you see Arizona State and all that. So let's try and see what Arizona State has.
Please excuse me. So sorry. I can't see your slide. What I could only see is your CV, volunteering experience. I don't know if that's from me.
Okay. Um, sorry. Is anyone else having that?
Yeah, Joshua, we can only see your CV. We can't see your slide.
Yes. Same here. I'm only seeing your CV. I can't see your screen.
Oh,
Same here.
okay. Am I still sharing? Sorry, I'll stop sharing and I will share. Okay. Okay, how about now?
Perfect.
Okay. All right.
Perfect.
Thank you. Sorry about that. All right, so I'll go over it again. So the first thing I said is you do a simple Google search, right? Universities in America that offer PhD in English and related courses. A simple Google search for that. And the first thing you see that it brought up a whole lot of information, Northeastern University, Wilding University, what else? I think I saw Cornell, gradschool.com, doctorate program. I don't know. I think this also is school. But I was saying, so you see the University of Texas at Austin, University of Texas, Austin, and Arizona State. So I wanted us to check Arizona State University, right? So English literature, PhD. So you see the program description, you see the program manager, right? The program director, you see the name. So you see that they have teaching they most likely have teaching assistantship. So I'd like us to open that. So teaching assistantship are available in the Department of English on a competitive basis. Admission to the program does not guarantee a TA. Priority is granted to PhD and MFA students in English, right? So if you have a master's in English, so why not? You can get in. So one thing I want you to know, the teaching assistantship is your funding. Is your funding. When you hear people say, oh, I got a fully funded offer, the teaching assistantship is your funding, because when you get a TA position, the department covers, or the university waives your tuition. The department covers they start paying you a stipend because you are working as a teaching assistant. Is usually 20 hours per week. Most time is not up to. So the teaching assistant is your funding, is the funding that you need. So now look at the program director. So this is email address. So I'll just copy this, copy the email address, and I'll put it there. His name is Lee. So the school is Arizona State University. So now let's see if we can get what their requirement is to be admitted into the department. So I think now I'm on the general admission info. So I'm going to the report that they choose. All right, I'll go back to the department. So Department of English, degree program, graduate degrees. So they have 14 graduate program in the department. So creative writing, masters, I think that's, so they have PhD in English education. So you see also they have English literature, right? If we click on English literature, let's see if we'll see their requirements. So this is the degree requirements. So you see the admission requirements, good. Applicant must fulfill the requirements of both these. Applicants are eligible to apply to the program if they have earned bachelor's, master's from either regionally accredited institution. Applicant must have a minimum CGPA of 3 on a 4-point scale, right? Or a minimum cumulative 3.5 scale, 3.5 GPA of 3.5, scale is 4 points in an applicable master's degree program. So let this not deter you. So I think in Nigeria we use 5, right? So you'll be able to, maybe tomorrow I think I'll share a resource how I was able to convert my own CGPA from 5 points to 4 points. So now you see that they need graduate admission and application fee. They require a fee, transcripts, so they need official transcripts, but like I said, most times you can apply even without official transcript. So I'm just going to copy these requirements, proof of English proficiency. So because in Nigeria and in other parts of Africa, in Ghana and all that, we were taught in English. So you can email them and you can tell them, oh, that the program director, you want to check if they waive English for students who have completed a program or their program with English instruction, right? So you can want to ask them that it's okay. They will respond to you most time. Or you go to the graduate school website. Most times they have exceptions there. They will say, oh, if you have completed a degree from any of the following countries, you are good to go. Like in my case, I didn't submit any English test, right? I didn't write any English test because it was crazy for me. Like all my life I've been taught in English. So why am I going to take an English test anymore? So I wasn't even considering writing an English test. So that's how to build this tracking system. So program link, so you look for the application link. So, but before that, there's something I want to talk about. There's something I saw that I would like to, faculty in literature, right? So these are professors who does research in that literature that you can send emails, right? So these are their names, you see their email address there and all that. So if you go through, for instance, if I click on, so we've seen Lee is the Jonathan. If I click on this, you may possibly see his research interest, right? You can see link to his Google Scholar account. You see that he's published some book. You see his his journals and all that. So you take time to go through that information. And if you are interested in sending Jonathan an email, so you just copy the email and you send it to, so I'll just have his name here, Jonathan. You leave his email there and all. So I'll say for funding, I think yes, because they give teaching assistantship and all that. So let's go back to see if we'll find information on how to apply. Going back here. Okay, so apply now. I think mostly, so you see, if you click on apply to the program, if you click on the link there, it should take you to where you can see the application form. So I don't know why this is loading, but that's just to give you like an overview of how you can build, right, your tracking system. So your application tracking system. When you get the link, you put it here. You set for the deadline so that you can keep track of it as well. So another way I searched for was using Google Scholar. Yeah. Okay, so on Google, you can just type Google Scholar and it will take you here. So what research are you interested in? I think the first time I just searched for bioinformatics. I know someone here is interested in bioinformatics. And so I'm going through. So Google Scholar is a place where like you barely find a professor in America who is not on Google Scholar. So they upload, so is a profile for professors. So you find them there, their research, you also find it there and all that. So now you scroll and you see a lot of them. Some of them are not Americans, right? So but once you click on their name, you'll be able to see, oh, Professor of Statistics and Bioengineering, Rice University. So this was what I was telling you, gift, right? It doesn't have to be that the professor is in bioinformatics department. So you can see this professor is in statistics and bioengineering, but he does research in bioinformatics and he's at Rice University. So I think the next thing you want to do, so I'll just go and search on Google the name of the professor, Rice University. So you see his profile right there. And yeah, so I click on the professor, look at what he does so you can read his research properly and all that. So you go back, I think, yeah, I applied to Rice University. I think that was in 2021. So they gave me love letter anyway. But you shouldn't, any school at all. I think they are one of the schools that you can get free application waiver. So yeah, so look at what the professor does. The same thing. You build the you take the professor's name if you're interested in sending him an email. So back to faculty, I'm trying to. So you find out that the program is biostatistics and statistics and bioengineering. I just go on Google, statistics and bioengineering. Rice University. The Department of Statistics and Bioengineering, Rice University. PhD curriculum, bioengineering. So you can see other faculty member in the Department of Biostatistics and Bioengineering. You can check through the same process. What do they do, right? What's their research about and all that? If you see any other that their interest aligns with yours, you send them an email. I believe we're still together. Please, anyone just respond.
Yes, we're with you, sir.
All right, that's great. Okay, so that's because of our time. So that's just it. So you can create your own tracking system like this, and you will be able to develop as you go. So I advise as many schools as you can, right? Just spread your tentacles and you get what you are looking for. Up to 10, up to 20, just target it. For each school you apply to, don't do the application shabbily, right? Be interested in making it worth it. So if you're interested in chemistry, for instance, the same process, right? So most chemistry programs in the US, you hear people say, oh, chemistry is fully funded and all that. It doesn't have to be that, oh, if you are it must be a pure chemistry department that you're going into, like I've said before. I think I saw the profile of this woman. No, sorry. I saw the profile of this woman. She's a Nigerian and she's doing an amazing research at this university, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Don't know. Yeah. So, and I think she does like an interesting research. So she does research in biosensors, surface chemistry, electrochemistry, and nanostructural conducting polymers, with emphasis on developing innovative technologies for improving human health and energy and the environment, right? So what is their research interest? Even if it doesn't align to yours, make it align. Don't limit yourself. Okay, don't limit yourself. It's very, very important. Don't limit your search, don't limit your interest and all that. If you're interested in medicinal chemistry, this is good. Biosensor, right? So you'll be working on improving health. You just align your story and tell your story and make it fit. This is a good person um, to send email concerning opportunity to join their lab. She finished from University of Lagos and all that. Yeah, so that's on that. That's on that. I don't know. Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing that screen for a moment. So I share my other screen. All right, so I'm on the screen with my slide right now. Can you guys see?
Sure, we can. We can see you.
Yes, yes.
All right, great, thank you. So now the next thing I want to talk about is your CV. Your CV, how to build your CV, how to keep it simple and all that. So it's very, very important that you do that because I have here that your CV is actually your marketing document. Your CV is your marketing document. Before you have opportunity to get into the room for interview, it's your CV that will determine. Most times people have been rejected based on their CV, right? Because they did not craft it well or they did not get it out well and all that. So you need to keep your CV simple. There should be a lot of white spaces. You need to keep it simple. You need to avoid time gaps. By time gap, I mean when you graduated in 2015. And the next year, the next time in your CV that you started working is 2019. What were you doing between 2015 and 2019? So they need to see that you are actively engaged, probably intellectually, and in something that is related to your field or closely related. And I have a recommendation here: keep it maximum 2 pages, right? It doesn't have to be so much. You just need the most important things to be on your CV. If you're applying for a PhD program, I want to say you can get to 3 pages, but please, as much as possible, keep it 2 pages because these people don't have all the time. They don't have all the time. to read all those things that you are putting there. So that's why you want to keep it 2 pages, and you want to keep it as engaging as possible and as interesting as possible. So I'll just run through my own CV, right? Though these have been edited and improved, but when I was applying, it looked something like this, right? And but this is how you can just get your own CV started. So summary, what is your summary? Summary about your professional life, right? About what you do, what you are interested in, your research interest. Um, that summary, you should put it up there. You should think about it. You should use action words, right? You should use phrases that best capture who you are. So those are very, very important. Now, your education, you should list them first. What degrees have you acquired? What yeah, those who are your advisors, when did you attend and all that. So you should list them there. What is your experience? Now, at the University of Jos, right? I wasn't given like you are a graduate research and teaching assistant. There wasn't an offer like that. But I was doing that as a student there because the department will give us scripts to grade. We'll join professors to invigilate exams. That's what graduate teaching assistant does. So that should be an experience. You should put it there as well, right? It should be an experience that you have. Um, Recently, someone was applying for something, and I thought, you did bachelor's degree and you did a project during your bachelor's degree. You have a research experience. That professor or that senior lecturer that you worked under, that was your advisor, his research, though they don't call it research group in Nigeria, but he has a research group, he has a research focus. He doesn't just do anything generally. So you can say that that is a position. Research assistant. You are a research assistant in your final year in the university. What did you do? You list it properly, conduct weekly laboratory session, provide tutorial. So you list what you did properly, your research, your teaching, and all that. So you're an instructor somewhere, you're a teacher somewhere. So those experience that align with yours. So that is how to smartly build your CV, right? So you don't need to leave out anything. As far as you have that experience, and you should put them down strategically, it helps. So that's on that. So leave space between each experience that you are looking at listing. Your volunteering experience in US, they appreciate volunteering very much. What training, what publication do you have? What training have you acquired? What professional certification / membership do you have? What are your key skills? So yeah, so you should put those there, right? Use words that describe or show what you do, and that explain what you are. Yeah, so I think that's it basically. So you can use this as a sample. There are several other samples actually you can use to actually build your CV online. So you don't need your age, you don't need your full address, just your email, your location, your phone number. I think that's fine, right? So all those things that we do in Nigeria, where we put our email, date of birth, place of birth, please take them out. Nobody needs to know that. Some of us will even put ethnic group, name of village. We don't need to know that, right? Um, yeah, so I think that's pretty much it from my end. So I just like to conclude today by saying that graduate school application isn't a walk or a walk by the park. It requires strategic, deliberate, and intentional effort. You can't do too much applications. You can't do too much, right? If you are looking for funding, you can't do too much application. As much schools as you can, apply to them. You need to focus on making each application strong. You need to, so that it can get you a yes. In 2021, like I said, I applied to about 6 schools. If you read my stories, and I got like a no and all that from all of them. I had to go back to the drawing board to check what I was doing right and what I was not doing right. So when I emailed the program director and he told me to apply, and I emailed the professor and the professor said, oh yes, I could go ahead and apply. The application fee was $95. I wasn't ready to actually waste $95. Of course, if you are in Nigeria, in Africa, you know that $95 is a whole lot of money, right? So I was just a teacher then. How do I get $95? So you have to be strategic. Like, I made sure I was disturbing people. Oh, review my stuff for me. Like, I had friends who were willing to review my application document. Please don't submit anything without reviewing them, without having a second eye look at it for you, right? Look at it for you. Um, so it's very, very important. So that brings me. So I think we had some people that were here very early and all that. So yeah, my friend and I will be doing something for you guys. So just look out for it if you are interested. Okay, so that's it from my end. Yeah, thank you for listening. So you can actually follow me across my social media handle. I talk about, of course, graduate school experience and how to get um, how to get yourself positioned for the right opportunity. Okay, yeah. So there'll be a question, there'll be a Q&A after the next speaker, so you can ask your questions already. Okay. All right. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Joshua, for your time. Very interesting one. We are grateful.
Thank you.
So we will be moving to the next speaker for today, and that is our own Professor Lina Gary. And I'm sure you guys can't wait to listen to her. She's very loaded. She has all the information that you need to make it a success in your application, graduate school application. Before we have her on, we would like to give a brief profile of her, who Lina Gary is. We have to know who she is and what she does. So I'll give a profile of.
Sorry,
Come again?
is she here already?
Is she on the line? I don't
Yeah,
know.
I'm trying to think if she's here.
Okay. Try and then we can move to the next section.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I think she's not yet here.
Okay, so should we take some questions?
Yeah, I think we
Right.
should take some questions.
Okay. So we are opening the line for questions. If you want to ask any question, you can just unmute yourself, raise your hands, and we take your question. And Joshua is here to answer you, give you all the answers that you need. You can put in the chat box too. I can read it out for Joshua to answer it if you don't mind.
All right. So my name is Alexander from Ghana, and I just want to say that thank you very much, Mr. Joshua Chukwu, for your wonderful presentation.
Yeah.
I got done with my bachelor's last year with in chemistry, right? And I'm looking forward to opportunities in PhD in chemistry. Now, my question will be with a bachelor's in chemistry, is it possible to directly apply for a PhD in chemistry, or I would have to go through a traditional route of applying for a master's before a PhD? That's my question.
All right, thank you. So I have colleagues, two of my colleagues, one from Nigeria and one from Ghana. So they they are doing PhD in chemistry and they just graduated with a bachelor's degree in chemistry. And I don't think even any of them graduated with a first class. So you don't have to actually have a bachelor's a master's degree before you can apply for a PhD. Yeah, so I don't know, Stacy,
Yes.
have you converted?
Not yet. Still on
Okay,
it.
but you are considering to, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so she came in as a master's, but I think she's considering to move to PhD, right? So is acceptable. So you can move, in America, you don't need to have a PhD, sorry, a master's before you can go for a PhD. I didn't know that quite a very long time. Um, yeah, I was thinking that I needed to have a master. So if I had known right from when I finished my bachelor's degree in 2015, I would have started like the process as early as possible. Probably maybe I would have been been a professor by now. Yeah, because like I'm like one of the oldest in my class. If you see these the people in my class, most of them like 20, 24. So they don't really need like you to have a master before you can apply. Yeah.
So thank you for your answer. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Any other
Okay, we
question?
have. Thank you, Joshua, for answering Alexander's question. We have Dr. Lina Gary on, and
Okay.
I'll read out her profile so she can take up the next section. Is that okay, Joshua?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so Lina Gary was born and raised in Manitoba, Canada. She completed a BSc in 2005 at the University of Manitoba with first class honor. She stayed at the University of Manitoba to pursue a PhD under the guidance of Professor Philip as an NSELC postgraduate scholar. She studied the behavior of trichloroethylene derivatives under palladium catalyzed cross-coupling conditions and developed a new route to benzopherones and indoles via PD catalyzed CH functionalization and earned a PhD in 2010. She then joined the research lab of Professor Michael at the University of Texas at Austin, where she studied ruthenium and iridium catalyzed propagation reaction in 2011. Lina became one of the inaugural recipients of postdoctoral fellowship through NSELC. Lina's last project at the UT involved the discovery and development of two new patterns of reactivity of ruthenium catalyst. Lina joined the University of Nevada, Reno in July 2014 as an assistant professor. Lina leads a research group at the University of Nevada, Reno. The group has two objectives: to develop robust and chemoselective catalytic methods for CC and CS bond formation, and to understand the mechanism by which they proceed. We use both transition metals and Lewis acid catalysts to enable bond formation and collaborate with other spectroscopists to study organometallic intermediate. Thank you. So that is the profile for Lina Gary, and we are glad to have her on. And she's ready to take over and speak to us about navigating US graduate school application. Thank you.
Hi, thank you very much for that introduction, and I am really happy to be here and give you a little bit of insight and advice onto applying for PhD programs in the US. Now, I've never applied to PhD programs in the United States because I went to school in Canada, but I've been on the admissions committee for the 10 years that I've been at UNR, and so been quite involved in that process and from that perspective. And so I will pull this up. All right, can everybody see the presentation?
Yes, we can
Yes,
see.
yes, we
Yes, we
can. We
can.
can see it.
Yes,
We can see
Okay.
it.
absolutely.
All right. So I did have a slide here just to give a little bit of my background, but Anastasia did a very good summary of that. And so while I've never applied to PhD programs in the US, I have applied for a number of scholarships. And I've been the recipient of about $250,000 of funding during my sort of mentored career. And I've been at UNR now for 10 years, and I've been tenured now for 4. So I'm a synthetic organic chemist, but at UNR we have PhD and master's programs in chemistry and a PhD program in chemical physics. And so we see a wide range of, excuse me, applicants that apply to our program. And so what we try to do is really look at the whole candidate, right? Not just sort of different individual aspects of it, right? And so UNR in most of the US requires, right, transcripts, English as a foreign language test, unless you have a degree from any of these countries listed here, your CV or resume, letters of recommendation, and of course the statement of purpose. And that's what I'll basically be talking about today. And so just as a general sort of thing, don't use ChatGPT or AI or anything like that, right? It's really obvious, and AI is not that good of a writer. Everything that it sort of spits out that you ask it to summarize, really, it sounds the same, and you don't want to sound the same as everyone else, right? You want your voice to really come through, right? Because we're trying to look to see if you have the potential to be successful in the PhD program and if you are likely to be a good fit for the department and our program, right? And so we really want to see, get to know how you think, right? How you are as a scientist and what kind of scientist you want to become, right? It's really about what you want to learn and what you really want to contribute to the overall scientific community. And so my PhD advisor, Phil, right at the beginning, he was also my undergraduate advisor, right? And so Canadians very typically do their bachelor's and PhDs at the same school, and I was no different from that. And so I knew him for quite some time. And even as an undergrad, he told me that the secret to good writing is really in the rewriting, right? And so don't expect your first draft to be perfect or really even good, right? And so very few people are good writers right from the beginning, and it's really sort of a skill set that's developed over time. And I'm even now a better writer than I was when I started my independent career, right? And so that's a continuously growing process. And so really what you should do is just write everything down that you can think of, put it away for a little bit, go work on something else, and then go back to it, right? You don't need to tell your story in a chronological manner, but it does need to be a story, right? We want to get to know you as a person and as a scientist. It really doesn't need to be more than 2 pages. And it doesn't need to be that long either, right? A page is fine. We see a lot of applications that are only 1 page, and that is yeah, there's no real limit, but you don't really want to have it very long, right? And so really, when you're writing your first draft, you can start with just key points, right? You can write it down as a bulleted list, and just sort of start moving them around, right? And so if you have a list of things that you want to talk about, go through and sort of in your head fill in that sort of narrative and then just move things around until it makes sense, right? And so everything in your personal statement, right, should be related to your goals, your research interests, and your experiences that you have already as a junior scientist. So you do want to talk about how or why you became interested in research, right? Saying something as general as I love science, right? Which we assume that you all do, right? That's not enough, and it's not really clear, right? What about science are you interested in? What sort of goals do you have, right? You don't really need to go back and tell your whole life story, right? It's really your sort of most recent experiences that you really need to sort of convey to the admissions committee, and just include things that really fit into that narrative, right? If you have any sort of extenuating circumstances, right, that kind of led to a less than ideal sort of academic performance, you might want to sort of talk about that there. For me, when I was a young undergraduate student, I really didn't know how to be a good student, and I ended up failing organic chemistry, right? And now I'm an organic chemistry professor, right? And so I dropped out of school. I took a year and a half off, and then I came back. And you can imagine my GPA wasn't very good in my first couple of years. And I doubled my GPA in my my subsequent years. And so I would talk about that in sort of subsequent scholarship applications. And I was successful in getting many scholarships after. And so that was helpful in talking about it. You really don't want to make excuses, right? And so the way that I would address my own circumstances in letters, I wouldn't dwell on it. Just like, oh yeah, I was a terrible student, and then I took a year and a half off, and then I came back. I'm clearly not a terrible student anymore. That's more sort of representative or indicative of my ability, and that seemed to be sufficient as I was able to get scholarships and get a postdoc and an eventual job. And so having imperfect record is not a deal breaker, but you may find it beneficial to sort of talk about it, right? And so when the graduate admissions committee does look at transcripts, when I look to see how many chemistry classes that they've taken, right? Particularly if you don't have a chemistry degree, right? And so we do accept students without formal bachelor's in chemistry, but if they have sort of that sufficient course background, or look to see if they have sort of requisite knowledge coming in, right? Because we want to make sure that people have the tools to be able to be successful in a rigorous PhD program, right? And so it is definitely okay, and we've definitely admitted students who, have ups and downs in their background, right? Not everybody can be 100% on their game all their time, and we do sort of recognize that and try to look at sort of the person as a whole and their growth process, right? And so if there are students like me who started off sort of poorly, look to see sort of that upward trajectory there. Right. And certainly having a lot of work or research experience will more than make up for perhaps, not the 4.0 GPA, right? Because being successful in a PhD program is so much more than just being successful in coursework. And so we do want to know sort of what kind of research have you done sort of in with your experience, right? So you want to talk about your research experiences. You'll want to talk about specific techniques and things that you've learned. If you have any poster presentations or publications, please talk about that, right? You don't need to go into sort of extreme detail, but we do want to if you do have papers or presentations, right, we want to see how you talk about that in a concise manner. And people applying to PhD programs, it's very rare to have publications. And so don't worry if you don't have any. That's very, very common. Any internship or work or teaching experiences look very is very good to have, but again, not necessary, right? The typical person finishing, I shouldn't say typical, right? So the youngest applicants that we get, right, are 21 or 22, right? So if you finish high school at 18, do a 4-year bachelor's, right, that puts you at about 22. And so, you know, you're not going to have a lot of experience there. But if you do have some, please talk about that. And if you can, describe your research experience in the context of sort of your group's general goals, right? And so my group has a bunch of different projects ongoing. And so each person contributes to their own individual ones, right? But we have overarching sort of goals, right? There's umbrella goals that we're just interested in. And if you can, as a PhD applicant, put your individual research project into a much broader context, right? That's amazing, right? That's not a skill a lot of undergraduates or PhD applicants have. And so if you're able to do that, you will certainly stand out from the bulk of the applicants, right? And so while you're talking about your own research experience, you can use that to segue into your interests and what you want to get out of a PhD program. And so you want to talk about specific area or areas that you're interested in. And it's completely fine if you don't know for certain what you want to do, right? So if you're interested just in organic chemistry as a broad subject or physical chemistry as a broad subject, that's totally fine. But if you have very or more sort of specific interest, right? So you want to make molecules, or you want to be a spectroscopist and study molecules, or you want to become a chemical biologist and study biomolecules. The more specific you can be is good, but you don't worry too much if you have sort of broad interests, or if you have collaborative interests, that's totally fine, right? And so we do want to see that you're interested specifically in the school that you're applying to, right? So we want to see if you're submitting an application to the University of Nevada, we want to know why you're interested in that, right? And so list faculty that you're interested in working with and why, right? And that doesn't have to be really long, and you're certainly not going to be obligated to be restricted to those people that you listed, right? But we want to know that you've put some a good amount of thought into applying to UNR, right? So graduate applications can be expensive. Apply to as many schools that you can afford to, and then make the decision after, right? So you don't need to restrict yourself too much, but we do understand that applying to grad school is pretty expensive. UNR doesn't have tuition waivers right now. I don't anticipate that being the case in the foreseeable future. Other schools do, and so they usually advertise that pretty prominently on their web pages. Now, if you're only interested in one faculty member, that is fine. But make sure that you reach out to that faculty member before you apply, right? So if working for that person basically is a deal breaker, whether you join that school or not, you want to make sure that they will be accepting graduate students that year, and that they are willing to sort of interview you and take you, right? You don't want to uproot your entire life and move to a school and then have the one person that you want to work with be unable to mentor you in the program, right? And so basically all of my colleagues have gone through years where they don't accept students, and it might be for funding reasons or space reasons. And so you just want to make sure that if there is a person there, that you are really, really keen on working with that, they do have space. Now, in general, I would never suggest applying to a school where there's just one person that you're interested in, right? Make sure that there's at least 2 or 3 people that you could see working with before you apply for, right? Because you also, you'll have your primary mentor, but you'll also have other faculty members on your committee. And so you want to have sort of a lot of people that you're interested in working with and perhaps collaborating with too. Right? And so we are less, right? I have little asterisks there, right? We are sometimes or often aware when our colleagues are not interested in taking students that year. And so if people list faculty members that are not taking students, right? So that person will be bumped down to the bottom of the list, right? And so you might be sort of rejected for reasons that are sort of outside of your qualifications. And so don't take rejections personally. Right? And so I will note that in the United States, Canada too, there's slightly different differences in titles, but when you're looking through faculty web pages and websites, it's only people with the titles of assistant professor, associate professor, or professor that are eligible to mentor graduate students. And so if you see teaching professor, teaching assistant, teaching associate, teaching professor, or research teaching professor, and so on, they are not eligible to take graduate students. Some other schools in the United States and schools in Canada, sometimes those people are called instructors if they're teaching faculty, but basically the research faculty, they're on soft money. And so they're funded from other faculties' research grants. And so they're not eligible to be direct faculty mentors. So just be aware of that. We don't expect non-US students to know that. And so if you happen to list someone in your application that is a teaching professor or a research professor, we're not going to hold that against you. But just because we're having this conversation now, I thought that I would point that out to y'all. And so broad goals, right? And so we want to know what you want to do after your PhD, right? And so why are you pursuing one, right? And so a PhD is hard, right? It's intellectually hard. It's emotionally hard, right? It's very taxing. And so that's not something that people go into lightly. And we just want to know your why. And it is completely fine if you're not 100% sure on what you want to do. And you'll probably change your mind several times throughout the PhD program on what you want to do. That's okay. We just sort of want to know what's driving you to apply to the PhD program at this point. Right. And so it is the highest degree possible, right? There is no higher degree. And so you're training to become an expert, right? At the end of your PhD, no one else on earth will know as much about your project than you do. And so why do you want to have that depth of knowledge, right? And so it's also okay just to want to do that sort of intellectual exploration. That was basically my goal when I started a PhD. I'd done my honors thesis with Phil, and partway through, I think just a couple months into my 4th year, Phil's just like, hey, do you want to stay and do a PhD? I'm like, yeah, okay, sure. That sounds like fun. And it often was, and it was sometimes not fun too, but I really enjoyed it and just really enjoyed the intellectual pursuit of it too. Now, if you are interested in an eventual teaching only position, right, to become a lecturer or a teaching assistant professor, that is obviously completely okay, right? Your life goals are your life goals. Nobody should tell you if they're sufficient or insufficient, right? But getting through a PhD is about doing research. And so even if you just, right, it's a hard job, right? Even if you just want to teach after, you do have to get through the research part. And so we want to know what kind of research you're interested in. Just as sort of general avoidances, right? I'd recommend using terms like prestigious universities, right? So those schools know when they are, and they also know when they're not, right? So if you're applying to, and again, there's nothing wrong with schools. I would encourage actually any American pursuing an undergraduate degree to start at a community college. They're wonderful and they're affordable, right? But if you're applying to say like Truckee Meadows Community College, which is a great school in Reno, right? You're not going to call that a prestigious university, right? And so just avoid that, right? Also using just general terms like esteemed faculty, unless you're talking about people in specific, right? You don't want to use very general terms like that, right? All schools have, right, fairly esteemed faculty. And so that's not, it's too general. It doesn't really say anything of substance, right? Similar with excellent research facilities. I would not recommend applying to any school without excellent research facilities, right? And so if you do want to talk about some of the facilities, that's fine, but I would only recommend doing that if they have some unusual instrumentation or uncommon instrumentation, like, hey, I am really interested in this particular spectroscopic technique. Your school is one of the only ones that has this. I'm really drawn to using that, right? And so again, you want to be as specific as possible. And in general, avoid using cliches when talking about yourself, right? Highly qualified, result-driven, focused. When those are true, and we assume that they are, if you're applying to a PhD program, those will be obvious from your application materials. And so they just feel like empty sort of marketing speak that don't really have a lot of substance, right? So you're the substance, right? We want to invest in you. And so that should come through with sort of your general narrative. Right, and so again, secret to good writing is rewriting. And so get as many people as possible to proofread your statement of purpose and offer comments. Oh, I was just thinking of something like that. It's really difficult to edit your own work, right? It's a lot easier to edit someone else's writing, right? Because when you've written something and you're going back through it, you know what you're trying to say. And so sometimes you don't read it as literally written, right? And so getting other people's feedback is good. It's also, worthwhile sort of practicing editing your own writing. But that, yeah, right, that's a skill, and that takes a lot of time. And so if you get feedback from a bunch of different people, you'll find that it's often contradictory, right? And that's okay, right? Because this is different people have different opinions about things, right? And so I think it's even beneficial to get contradictory feedback sometimes, because it really forces you to think about what you're writing and what you're trying to say, right? So you want it to be organized, you want it to look neat, use consistent fonts and font sizes. The font itself doesn't matter that much. You don't want to use something goofy like Comic Sans or something like that, but a standard sans serif or serif font, totally fine, right? Like Times New Roman or Arial. You just want it to be all the same font, which might sound kind of goofy to say, but we've definitely had graduate applications, and frankly, even applications to faculty positions where that's not the case. And it just feels a little bit sloppy, right? And so as I say, sort of at the bottom here, this is our first glimpse into what we call grantsmanship, right? How you present yourself and how you present how you think, right? And so a sloppy looking document implies a sloppy thinking person, and you definitely don't want to come across that way. But that certainly has happened, right? And so if you do include figures, which it's not common. I was just trying to think in our last application cycle, I don't think there's a single applicant out of about 100 that we got this past year that had any figures. But if you do choose to include figures, right, you might want to, if you have a publication or a poster presentation, something like that, you want those to look as neat as possible. And that is all I have from bullet points, but I am happy to answer any questions that y'all might have.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gary. That was a wonderful session. Thank you so much. Yeah, so Stacy, you can coordinate the Q&A session right now. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Gary. Thank you for being on this section. We are very grateful. We are opening the line for anyone who wants to ask any question. Dr. Gary is here. Joshua is here to answer them. You can put it on the chat box and I'll read it out. Okay, we have one hand up. So Vesta, you can unmute yourself and ask your question if you don't mind.
So there's a question about the cumulative GPA of an applicant. And so if you're applying to the master's program, the graduate school, right? And so this is out of the admissions committee's hands partially. For the master's admission, it's 2.75, and for the PhD program, it's 3.0. And if you're not from an American school, the graduate school will convert your country's GPA into the 4.0 scale. We can write letters of exception to the graduate school to ask for permission to admit candidates with lower than a 3.0 GPA. That's not particularly common, but we have definitely had cases where students had like maybe a bad year or two, picked it up at the end, or all of their chemistry classes were had a higher score than, say, their overall GPA. We don't really have a formal weighting of it. And so it's important, but it's not that important, right? Like being successful in a PhD program is so much more than just having good grades. Like we've had students who have excellent grades, but don't have at least like what synthetic chemists would call lab hands, right? Not that good at synthetic chemistry. And in my group, I've had 4 PhD students graduate, and I think, I don't know, well, one of them for sure who came in had we had to write a letter of an exemption because they did not have sufficient GPA, and that person ended up being an excellent graduate student. And so it really sort of depends on the overall application. We certainly value experience more than grades, but if grades are really low, then there's often not much we can do, right? The grad school wouldn't let us make an exception for that. But for the For the slides, yeah, I can share the PowerPoint I put together. I can send it to Joshua, and then he can distribute that to anybody who wants. I am happy to do that.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Gary. So, Sylvester wants to ask a question, so you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, good
Good evening, sir.
day. I just want to ask about the whole procedure. So sorry.
Wow. Okay, someone is asking a question in the chat box. I had my BSc in economics about 10 years ago. Can I still stand a chance if I apply for a PhD in economics? Sylvester, please unmute and please mute yourself. When your place is less noisy, you can ask your question. Thank you.
Certainly. 10 years out from an undergraduate is not only fine, but you'll also be bringing a lot more experience with you, right? Because you'll be presumably in the workforce for about 10 years between the bachelor's and starting the PhD. And so that could actually be a benefit. Might be a little bit rusty going back into classwork, but definitely not a deal breaker.
Okay, I was gonna ask. My name is Gabe. Thanks so much for the lectures. I don't know where to start from, but so what about those that haven't had like much practical experience in the workforce, but probably in school labs, and also talking about poster presentations. How about like classroom presentations among your peers? Can that also count? And project thesis. So I've got issues with my grades based on my first semesters, and modules were not great, but towards the end, I came out with all A's. I don't know if that's a very good ground, but my grades are not up to the 3.0. So it's about 65%. I don't know.
If you have that sort of upwards trajectory, as you just described, that will be seen as a strength, I think, at least the way University of Nevada chemistry evaluates applications. Now, as far as presentations from classwork, I don't think I have ever seen anybody include that on their CV. Although when I was applying for faculty jobs, right? So when I was applying to University of Nevada, I did include one class presentation as demonstrating sort of teaching experience, because it was sort of a lecture and not just sort of a class presentation. So it kind of depends on the context, but most people applying to graduate school don't have presentations or publications. And so while it will definitely benefit you to have them, it is not looked down upon if you don't, because most people don't, right? Because most people just have about 8 months of maybe research experience while applying to school.
All right,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you so much. Dr. Gary. Richard has a question, so you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
All right. Thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. Yeah, I think Professor Lina has actually answered part of my question. So my question is, for someone who does not really have publication experience, or have not really published, research on journals and the rest, and has not really, have laboratory working experience, someone with a BSc, I actually have a BSc in genetics and biotechnology, but my experience has been in the classroom, like mostly teaching, and then, education line actually. So, but I actually intend to navigate back to my course, that's genetics and biotechnology. So my question, how do I then craft my my SOP to suit what I actually studied as a BSc in school, but while my working experience, volunteering experience is actually based on teaching and non-governmental organization, not in a research or laboratory field.
Ooh.
So I like there's a kind of two different fields. So how do I craft it to suit my BSc experience in genetics and biotechnology?
Oh yeah, that's a little bit more complex. It's okay. And we have certainly admitted students over the years that have very limited lab experience, either in general or in chemistry specifically. It's sometimes thought of as a little bit more of a risk, but really, everybody is kind of a risk in a way, right? So it's not easy to predict who's going to be successful in graduate school, because there's so much to it, right? So if it was just as straightforward as, oh yeah, so if you have straight A's, you're going to be a stellar student, it's not always the case. I think just a well-written statement of purpose that talks about what experience you have and what you want to get out of it, that will be, I think, more, I shouldn't say more, that will be just as meaningful as having specific experience in your targeted area.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Gary. Alexander has a question, and I asked him to unmute himself so that he can speak up.
So, Dr. Gary, really appreciate your insights about applying to graduate school. Now, my question comes in two folds, right? So my first question will be, at the end of a review of an applicant's submission for application, looking at the various components of the application, let's say the SOP, the transcripts, and the other details that are in there, is there a rubric that is used to grade these students? Yeah, on a scale of 10, let's say we have the resume. If it's good, maybe it's up to like 8 or 9 or 10. Is there like a rubric, and how is it done? Now, my second question would be as at the end of analyzing everything, what is the impression that the committee wants to get from the applicant before saying that, oh, we want to admit this student? Yes. So these are my questions.
No, we don't use a rubric. And I'm not aware of any US or Canadian school that does. But I haven't, frequently when I meet faculty from other institutions, I ask them about sort of their graduate admissions review process and just sort of get a sense of how things are going out the rest of the country. But I'm not aware of that. Now, what we're mostly interested in is sort of just intellectual curiosity. Definitely tenacity and perseverance will get you much farther in graduate school than just sheer brilliance will. There's a lot of failure that happens in graduate school, and it can be really tough on people. And so just an intellectual curiosity is what sort of I value sort of the most in people. I think Did that answer your question?
To a point, but I would want a little bit of clarity that how does each component weigh, like ISOP, transcripts, experience, research, lab experience, and all that? How do each of these weigh in the process?
It varies, I would say, from candidate to candidate, right? Because we don't use a rubric, it's not the same for everyone. And quite frankly, there's a lot of luck and timing that goes into it too, right? And so we'll get between 60 and 120 candidates applying for the PhD program at the University of Nevada in any given year. And so it's really weighted against your peers that are applying to in that particular application cycle. And so there it might be possible that we might sort of reject your application in one year, whereas we might have accepted you the year before, just because the pool is a little bit different, right? So we have finite spaces, and just sort of that's the way it kind of goes.
Sure, thank
All
you.
the schools are like that. It's not, obviously not just us.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Gary. We have a question in the chat box. James wants to know the possibility of getting into a PhD program if he has a BSc in chemistry and MSc in inorganic chemistry with an unpublished work. What is the possibility of getting into a PhD program in either inorganic or organometallic chemistry?
Well, I guess it depends on what the other components of your application are, but certainly having unpublished work is good, right? It doesn't have to be published, and certainly I'm an organometallic chemist, but coming at it from the organic perspective, and I've had one PhD student who came from an inorganic background, a very strong inorganic background, no published work, but they were awesome. And so I would be certainly interested in reading that application.
Okay, thank you so much. We have another question for you, Dr. Gary, coming from Joshua Susanna. He says, does having a master's degree increase one's chance of getting graduate school admission and funding? His second question is, if a candidate with a BSc and another with an MSc secure graduate school admission and funding in the same program, would they both take the same courses?
The second one is easiest to answer, and that is yes. The same number of courses, right? And so we don't have specific courses, at least at the University of Nevada, that everybody is required to take, but we do have a specific number of credit hours of sort of traditional lecture classes. And so somebody going into the PhD program with either a BSc or an MSc will have to take the same number of classes. There are some exceptions to that, right? So if you do have a master's, you can apply to the graduate school to have some of those classes count towards your required ones. It's not a guarantee, but that's certainly an option. Having a master's I would say does not, at least in chemistry, it does not increase one's chance of getting admission. Everybody gets funding, at least in the sciences in the US. And so that is always a guarantee. I'm not, other fields might be different, but all STEM fields will pay students and pay their tuition as well. There's some small amounts of fees, I think, that students have to pay. I don't know how much those are, though.
Okay, thank you. We have another question from Eric. Eric wants clarification on whether there is something to be done when a part of the requirement for admission, the school asks you not to submit any official transcript, as they will need it to be sent directly from the school, from your school. where he or she obtained the BSc. In this case, must you inform your school to send the transcript directly to the school you're applying to, or they have their own means of obtaining the transcript?
We
Should I come
and
again?
Okay. We accept, and Frank, I encourage everybody to submit unofficial transcripts as part of the admissions process, right? Don't pay money or any more money than you have to get official transcripts, right? And so if you do, so you can just upload whatever you can download from your school, the unofficial ones, put that into whatever application portal. And if we offer you admission and you accept it, the school will require official transcripts to make sure that you meet the admissions requirement, but that just means that you just have to do it once, right? So if you spend all that time and money to get official transcripts sent to everywhere you apply, that's definitely not necessary. And so include unofficial ones and only the official ones once you decide which school you're going to go to.
Okay. Eric wants to know that must he request for the transcripts from a school by himself, or the school he's applying to will email his school to request for the transcript, for his official transcript?
I would not include a video in your SOP. There's probably a way to upload one, but definitely not necessary. A question about fully funded scholarship for an MBA in agribusiness. To the best of my knowledge, in the US and Canada, the only way to get a fully funded MBA is through employment. I'm not aware of any way of doing that otherwise.
Okay. John wants to know if he's a medical doctor and a graduate of public administration with 6 years of experience, and he wants to go into agribusiness, MBA in agribusiness. What's the chances of him getting admission?
I mean, it's certainly for getting admission that looks like a totally reasonable background, but most people, again, in North America, will pay out of pocket for an MBA.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Any more questions for Dr. Gary before he checks out?
I have a question. Can I go ahead?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Gary, for your talk and educating us. And my question actually goes to Mr. Chuku. I graduated with from computer science and having an HND, that's higher national diploma, and planning towards a master's in the US. I don't know, is that workable? I'll still have to go for a postgraduate diploma before processing that.
Okay, Frank.
Yes, sir.
So yeah, it's possible with an HND. So I think last year, I think it was 2 years ago, like I was blown. In fact, that was part of the things that motivated me to apply for admission in 2022 again, because I saw someone who graduated with an HND, I think from a federal polytechnic in Osun. She graduated with HND in chemistry. She had a distinction, and she got into about 3 universities in America. So I was blown away. So what did she do? I read her profile. I don't know if I can remember her name. She actually used WES. WES is World Education Service, where they reevaluated. So I think WES reevaluate transcripts, right? So sometimes if you even have a low CGPA, when you use WES, so based on, in Nigeria, in Africa, we do a lot of courses that are sometimes not really related to what we want to do during the bachelor's degree. So WES will most likely take away those courses that are not related to your program of interest, and they will recalculate your CGPA based on what you want to do, and they will help you. So they will be the one to send that transcript direct to the university. Sometimes they will send you a copy as well, like an unofficial copy that you can use. So that was what that lady did. And she got to, I think she had a distinction, a HND distinction, and she got directly into PhD. So I was fascinated by that. So, and I think I've heard of stories of people that use their HND to get fully funded PhD scholarship in America just by evaluating WES. And I will advise you, if possible, maybe try to sit for GRE, but most schools also waive. But I think that WES evaluation is like the basic thing that you can do, and it will help your application to stand out. If you are buoyant, you can add a GRE. If not, just do your WES and focus on making your application strong, and I think you'll be good. Yeah. Also, Dr. Gary, I was meaning to ask, yeah, I know that the University of Nevada, they don't need applicant to send potential advisors like an email before they are accepted and all that. So, but does that have like any effect? Maybe I identify a research group and I identify a professor whose research interest aligns with mine. Can students email those professors? Like, I know you mentioned that there are cases where there are scenarios where the admission committee may have to make a case for someone with a lower CGPA. For example, someone with a low CGPA, because I wouldn't advise anyone with a low CGPA, in quote, to just apply, will I say blindly or something, probably establish contact with a professor. And if they are interested, I think, does professors have a way of recommending potential students to the graduate admission committee? Or I've identified this student, I can work with them. I think their CV is great, their transcript is great. Yeah, how does that work?
There's certainly been cases before, right? And so we have 20-ish research active faculty at the University of Nevada, and only about 5 of us are on the committee, right? It's only about 25% of us sit on there. And so, a lot of our applicants are interested in faculty members that aren't on the graduate committee. And so there have definitely been cases where some of my colleagues have emailed me or other people in the community, like, hey, this student reached out to me. I am really interested in this student. Can you please make sure that, like, if they're qualified, basically, can you make sure to offer them admission? And so even if the CGPA is a little bit lower, if somebody is really interested in a student, that's when we can step in and make a case to the graduate school to make an exemption for them. It's also possible, right? So PhD admissions is 3.0 on a 4.0 scale. So say you had a 2.8. So we can ask for a letter of an exemption to the graduate school, or we can suggest that you move your application to the master's, because the master's is 2.75, get into the program, and then with sufficient progress, you can transfer into the PhD program after. That's less common. Usually, if we want to have a student come in, we'll just ask for a direct letter of an exemption. But that's certainly possible.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Gary. I don't think we have any other question. Or Stacy, do we have any other question?
No, we don't have any other question. think we are done.
Okay, I think we have question. There is one addition precious. He asked a question during Joshua's session. So
Okay.
he was
What
saying,
was
he said, please, sir, is it WhatsApp? He was asking what WhatsApp or website did you use to write your CV?
Oh,
That was the
okay. I
question he
think
was
The
asking.
person has been responded to
yeah, I responded.
Okay,
privately. Yeah.
okay.
That I use MS Word to create my CV. Yeah. So if you use the web, there are apps you can use, but sometimes I don't encourage that. Your CV, you can just work on that simply yourself and all that. Yeah, Sharon. Do you have Sharon? Okay, can you go 1 minute quickly? You have a question?
All right. Yes, I do. Thank you. Thank you for the talks, Dr. Gary and Joshua. So I have a question. It's not based on US, it's based on funding. So I applied to a school, and I also mentioned in the interview and in my application that I needed some funding, and I applied for funding that the school was willing to give, and the ones from external bodies too. So I have gotten admission, but I haven't heard back from the school or any of their funding bodies, and even the department, because when I spoke to the professor, he told me that he will make sure my name is on the list for departmental nominations, but I haven't gotten any feedback, and I sort of have like 1 month to go to accept my offer, and it's also dependent on me being able to provide funding. And I was wondering if I could mail the professor to, just ask, because the website says to wait, that people send out funding letters even till July. But I'm a little concerned and anxious, so I'm wondering how to go about that.
Ooh, I'm not totally sure. I guess really the only thing that you can do is just sort of sit tight and hope for the best.
Yeah. So I think I assisted a friend earlier this year. He got into, I think, New York State University or so, I can't remember. So what happened was the same case with you, Sharon. His admission letter came, but there was no funding. So he was confused on what to do. So I asked him to email the professor that he had could emailed before. So the professor was like, oh, he's not sure that he should go ahead to provide proof of funds and all that. So I said, but the professor said he had recommended him for a teaching assistant, which is the funding. So I now told him, okay, you should wait till like April and all that. So in March, he got the offer from the department to take him in as a teaching assistant, and that was his funding. He just got his visa like a few weeks back. So I don't think there's an harm actually in probably emailing the professor, right? Because of course, you know that before you get visa date, if you're in Nigeria, you need like months of applying, right? Another thing I would say is that probably you can wait, as Dr. Gary had said, and check if the department have option for deferment, right? Some schools will allow you to, some department will allow you to defer admission if you can't get your visa till like the spring, right? And some will allow you to do that. Or if it's something you can also reach out to the program director and find out about like the update of it. Sometimes they are willing to tell you, oh, we are still in the process, or we have already made our decisions and all that. So yeah, I understand how you're feeling at the moment, but don't worry, just keep faith.
All right, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much, Dr. Gary. Dr. Gary is an amazing mentor. Thank you so much. We appreciate, thank you for accepting to be here and accepting to do this. Thank you, everyone. So thank you so much, Stacy. Thank you. Stacy is an amazing colleague. Thank you, So Stacy is a pharmacist. Most of you don't know, but let me blow her cover. So from being a pharmacist, she's in chemistry, graduate student in chemistry as well. So that's why I said don't actually limit like your spread. You can get funding based on your interest in whatever program you are interested in doing in the US. And Somto also moderator. He will be leading us for tomorrow. So Somto is the co-founder at Youth Skillnik. So I founded Youth Skillnik. I'm interested in supporting young people to thrive. So Youth Skillnik is a virtual platform where we support people to thrive, to acquire skills. We do a lot of CV. We help people to build their CV, right? We do a lot of training on how to prepare for interviews. We provide soft skills training for young graduates. Soft skill is a thing that I feel people should have. So we do that from time to time, and Soto is the co-founder, and he's amazing. He's also a professional graphic designer. So the flyer for the event, Soto designed it, so you can reach out to him if you need the services of a professional graphic designer. Yeah, I think there's an announcement. Stacy? Yeah.
Okay. So thank you so much, Dr. Gary. Thank you so much, Joshua. This was a very good section. We are very grateful for your time. Tomorrow will be day 2 of this program, Navigating US Graduate Applications. And we'll be having 2 other colleagues speaking on SOP and how to draft code mail to professors. Very important, code mailing and how to put together a very strong SOP, statement of purpose. So that will be the focus for tomorrow. And we'll be glad to have you all. We'll share the link with you guys and you can share with your friends, invite people to be on, and let's win together. All right. So that is it for today. We will meet tomorrow and we'll have 2 other colleagues to talk to us about SOP and code mailing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening in Nigeria and have a good afternoon in America.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody. Have a good night rest. That's if you're in Nigeria. Have a good night rest. If you are other places, based on your own time, have a good day. Have a good afternoon. Yeah. Bye, everybody.
Yeah, Nigeria. Good evening.